Sup, shooters! My name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Pink, as well as Willow Sage Heart, titled Cover Me in Sunshine. And if we switch over to here, we've got a kind of a weirdness thing going on here where you can't see the title. We've got Top Loader Dancing in the Moonlight, which is actually the next song we're going to be checking out the following week. There we are, I've got it set up now, so it'd be good to check through this track. It's another one of the popular songs that students of mine want to learn to play on instruments like the guitar and the ukulele, and we're going to listen through this track from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. I love that. Sorry to interrupt. I know, because it irritates some people when I interrupt, and I'll try not to. It's just nice to just have the scenery set with the sound of the birds, Cover Me in Sunshine. It's a phenomenal audiovisual experience before you even get into the track. Just imagine. Phenomenal sound design with those kicks. And the guitar surrounding you in the headphones. And it's just that little pause there. It's just so, cutthroat, straight to the point. Such good use of real estate there. It's just fantastic to have them come together as well. I think that Willow Sage Heart, if I'm not mistaken, could be Pink's daughter. I'm not sure. Apologies if I've misunderstood the assignment. But just clearly they can both sing. And it's quite like an acoustic, sort of like oddly kind of raw performance. It's not overproduced at all. I mean, aside from the reverb tails in certain parts. Cover me in sunshine. I mean, there's something incredibly beautiful and oddly daring just about how, I just like how straightforward it is. But I'm not going to bluster at this point. We're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Pink, as well as Willow Sage Heart, titled Cover Me in Sunshine. Now, before we go any further, what do we think this track is about? I think that this song is about, looking at all of life's follies and difficulties as those massive mountains at distance as little hills, and just sort of trying to appreciate the finer things in life, knowing that everything's going to be all right in the end, that we're going to get through it. And we look at maybe this ideal situation at some point in the future, but knowing we're working towards that fills us with hope. And the world's been spinning since the beginning and everything's going to be all right. There's a little bit of humor in that, which I appreciate. It's very personable, very friendly sounding track, which makes sense considering the subject matter. And in general, I just think the audiovisual experience of showing both Pink and Willow Sage Heart sort of enjoying the time on the farm, interacting with the animals, just living their best life, smiling, etc., is an incredibly sort of serene thing to preview. I just think that it's just such a wonderfully sort of serene environment audio-visually. You can see them sort of dancing around and sort of hanging out with the animals and everything like that. It's just, there's such a phenomenal connection between the story that's being told within the story, as well as the style and expression of the vocals, as well, everything is, it makes total sense. So in terms of the vocal performance, I think that both Pink and Willow Sage Heart have done incredibly well here. I'm wondering if this is Willow's first track or first release. I'm unsure. They're quite young. It could possibly be. And I think that they sang really neatly in a hidden chest voice. They had a part mostly forming in a harmony with Pink in the chorus sections, as well as having their own sort of little bit of interpretation of it at the end. And I feel like they sung that very neatly, hitting the words nice and clearly sort of developing as a vocalist. But I think they handled themselves well here, and the expression was most important. They seemed like they were just singing because they wanted to. Pink clearly more experienced considering how long they've been doing music for, sung it incredibly well. There's this almost kind of wistful, measured, balanced tone to it. It was like they've been very introspective while sort of thinking over what they're discussing within the piece. And they discuss these, maybe they can allude to their own life that they've had personally, with Willow's just, kind of having begun. It's an interesting perspective from someone who's lived quite a life versus someone who's just beginning. I like the fact that they're coming together to sort of acknowledge that whatever stage you're at, there are the mountains and they could be molehills. Pink is also very comfortable in the hidden chest voice, a little bit of vibrato occasionally, a bit of vocal cry there, sort of range to the expression. Interesting note choice as well, managing both the triads, the sort of diatonic triads, as well as some other diminished sort of chromatic chords potentially within the progressions that exist within the guitar parts, whilst also providing a nice sort of color and flavor overall to the piece, whether it is the verse or the chorus is harmonizing neatly with Willow, and ultimately just making the most of the short form factor. We aren't too direct with the vocals, but we also are trying to sort of continue to keep it artistic. And there's a bit of vulnerability in the performance earlier on to the piece there, especially in our like head voice, but like we remain resolute within those chorus sections. So I like the range and so I like how the vocals have been done within this piece. I think in terms of the actual structure of the track at 2 minutes 36, it's nice and short and sweet. It's practically about 2 minutes long. And I think that's all you really needed. A couple of verses, a couple of choruses, just enough to be able to tell a story the way it needs to. Having a shorter chorus at the beginning simply to kind of you have a taste for it before you kind of pop out, go into another verse there, having an extended chorus there at the end, and then finally having Willow at the end to kind of like sort of sing us out there. And having the sung la 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 part in the interlude, which I cannot do justice to, it's just a nice way to sort of like adjust things vocally. There we have Pink and Willow as the main leads within this piece, but to sing melodies is supposed to do further storytelling after the chorus, kind of refreshes the palette a little bit in time for us to have that final chorus from Willow. So I think that's effective. The vocals are on point, structurally makes sense as well. We have a very similar sort of like chord progression and bass line for a lot of it. Oh no, we don't actually. No, we have several ones. There's a distinct progression that kind of like follows neatly through the verse and loops. And then there's like a bridge section as well with 2 chords, and they're kind of like the dominant 7th of maybe a flat 5 or something like that. And that creates tension before you have like a pause and then go into the chorus line. So yeah, no, there are, even within a short 2-minute form factor track, we do have variation within the harmonies. I appreciate that. Different chord progressions to make them more distinct. I think there's just a really palatable guitar line there with the finger picking there, giving it a kind of like country tone to the styling of it, which can do, again, considering the video, considering the subject matter, the nature, like it's really, again, as well connected. There's clear thought process put into it. We really know what we're doing, and it's expected. There's little bits of variation within the finger picked arpeggios as well, which are just like lovely. They're a serene tone. They're secondary to Pink's parts there, but it's just a very charming piece that doesn't overcomplicate the majors and suspendeds that are there. There's also a really interesting tone to the kicks and snares. We aren't wanting them to be too dominant, so we filter them so that they are more sort of like low oriented, and then they kind of rise up a little bit in each of the bridges to kind of go into the chorus sections where they kind of sort of further unfurl with the mixture of different cymbals, snares and kicks, and that's all really neat. There is an interesting 8th note groove with 16th offbeats, and it's nice. In fact, there's kind of a 16th note groove in terms of the rhythm all the way, because it happens with the guitars as well within the fingerpick sections. Now with the guitar fingerpicking 16th note rhythms, and then the hi-hats sort of like resemble that as a further kind of like emphasis on it in the hook. The sub bass or the bass in the chorus as well is nice and thick and full, and the guitar is sort of spread around the stereo field as well in the chorus section to make it seem bigger. It's just really intelligent design decisions. And there's also some interesting sort of like nostalgic strings in some parts there with a bit of a vintage tone to them, which kind of suits the vignette of the video at that point. I think it's really clever to kind of make it almost seem like a cinema soundtrack, almost like our lives in one big movie. They reinforce the existing harmonies there without being too blunt about the roots. But what I will mention is that in terms of the actual instrumental parts, it's not just the fact that there are instruments and vocal parts, it's also the sound of the foley of the birds and everything like that at the start and end of the track. I think that's incredibly effective because it sort of sets up the atmosphere of us being out in the countryside amongst nature and appreciating that. You have that at the start and at the end when Willow sings that final chorus there, and it's just incredibly adept, or at least the birds come in after Willow's sort of start singing, almost like you've been listening to the story and then, oh, boom, here are the birds now. The song has ended. You can appreciate nature now. So it's the use of Foley that connects well with the actual instrumental components as well as the vocals, which are done well here. And then thematically, I feel like the use of majors and minors with occasional extendeds and maybe some dominant sevenths or some 7 flat 5s and like the bridge section are just really kind of like intelligent, primarily because they illustrate a little bit of complexity of emotion in terms of the uncertainty about it, but then ultimately are, again, like a focus on how positive things are and the emphasis on the mid to highs. It kind of illustrates, we need to be focusing on looking up at the sky and appreciating the sun shining down on us. The higher like emphases and resonances in the frequency spectrum make it seem a bit more kind of shiny and pretty. And I think that it's just not only the instrumental layers, but also the progressions, the choice of which instruments play those parts with the guitars and the strings emphasizing them further. There are just sensible decisions being made here. And I feel like the mood of those chords and progressions suit everything else. So it's just the studio production. And ultimately the studio production is really well done as well. I mean, I like the sound design of the kind of birds and the songs at the start. I think that having the Foley there is fantastic. I like that some of the elements such as the drums are relatively subtle until we get into the chorus there, and they are affected by the filtering and automation of things being rising with the filters actually being moved in post. I like how the stereo field fleshes out as you go into the chorus section as well, but not immediately. It kind of goes whoom like that, and the bass kind of spreads out really neatly as well. There are moments where the song completely stops. I like the Cover Me in Sunshine part kind of covers you over. I like that the vocals are not overproduced and they're not sort of like sterilized. There's a bit of reverb on occasional takes, but they do great enough takes and they're great enough vocalists that they don't need to sort of like sugarcoat it in post. There is dynamic range. I like the contrast between, for instance, when we sort of, if we stop singing the song, then we go to the bird songs at the end, like things kind of fade out a little bit, kind of like becomes a little more kind of like chill. And at the start, going into the track. But there's even like, points where the track stops and then you kind of have things rise up again. That because of an absence of certain elements of certain frequency spectrums, it's louder without being too much, without being abrasive. There are no harsh textures or resonances within the piece. I appreciate that. It's nice to know that pumping to the bus compression limiting is handled. And ultimately, I think this is actually an incredibly positive review of this track from Anaxa Pink as well as Willow Sage Heart, titled Cover Me in Sunshine. And hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via the various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as we need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP reviews. Spider Hands out.